Alright, well, time to feed the viewers. Hello, viewers. Mornings. Another beautiful day. Hope your five senses work. Health and strength is good or excellent. Good. Alright, listen to this. AMD said this. It says AMD defends the RX 960 XT 8 gigs. Talking about video RAM. Saying majority of gamers have no use for more video RAM. Says here, AMD says they wouldn't make 8 gigs if it wasn't needed. Says the Radeon RX 480 launched 9 years ago with 8 gigs of video RAM instead of with 8 gigs of 8 gigs of memory priced at $229. Few would have guessed that nearly a decade later, 8 gig model would not only persist but become even more expensive, and AMD's new Radeon RX 9060 XT comes in at $299 for the 8 gig version, with a 16 gig model priced at $349. While the 16 gig variant appeared to be a reasonable price upgrade, AMD is already facing criticism for using confusing naming practices similar to NVIDIA RTX 5060 Ti, which also comes in 8 gigs and 16 gig configuration. Frank Azor, AMD's chief architect of gaming solution, defends the decision by pointing out that most gamers still play at 1080p and do not need more than 8 gigs of video RAM. He adds that AMD wouldn't produce such a card if there weren't a clear market for it. While that might be reasonable defense, reviewers remain unconvinced, particularly as memory demands for modern games continue to rise. The main concern isn't just the memory size, it's the inconsistent naming that misleads the consumers. And it says here, Hardware Unbox said 8 gig versions of products such as the 9060 XT are designed for system integrators to milk customers, which is why AMD and NVIDIA mislead by using the same name, just to be honest. And it said, Frank Azor said a majority of gamers are still playing at 1080p and have no use for more than 8 gigs of memory. Most play games, WWR, mostly esports games. We wouldn't build it if there wasn't a market for it. If 8 gigs isn't right for you, then there's a 16 gig, same GPU, no compromise, just memory. He said there was a little justification for labeling both the 8 gig and 16 gig model under the same RX 960 XT name. AMD, which already has history of launching numerous SKUs, could have avoided confusion by branding the 8 gig card simply as RX 960, with only a few models in the RX 9000 lineup so far. This naming flexibility still exists. And then it says here, RX 960, $349 for the 16 gig, $299 for 8 gigs. Says here, the same criticism applies to NVIDIA RTX 5060 Ti. Only 16 gig models was sent to reviewers, which might lead buyers to assume that the 8 gig version performs similarly, despite potential difference in real-world performance due to memory limitation. At least AMD priced their cards lower and did not restrict the PCIe 5.0 interface to 8 lanes, a contributing factor to lower RTX 5060 Ti performance. Under certain conditions, in the end, we'll see around June 5th whether the statement holds up. Frank Azor has a history of making questionable claims, such as making fun of 32 gigs RDNA 4 GPU rumors, while it just launched at ComputeX only under the Radeon Pro AI branding, not to mention statements about working with partners to improve availability. MSRP model, which has shown no result for more than 2 months of RX 970 release. And that is that. So we got 182 comments and they're just sounding off on this. Look, there was an article that talks about there was an article I seen a couple of days ago about the same 8 gig 8 gig video RAM is not enough, you know, when it comes to today's gaming, especially when games get so big, and they're getting so big, and they're getting so demanding now. So 8 gig, that was 8 gigs 10 years ago shouldn't be the same as the 8 gigs of today. Because, like, for instance, let's say you came out with 8 gigs of video RAM like 10 years ago, right? A 8 gig variant today is not the same. It means that the RAM speed might have increased from 10 years ago. Let's say you came out with 8 gigs of video RAM in what year is this? 2025. Let's say in 2015 you came out with an 8 gig variant of video RAM, right? And the speed for that time was the speed for that time. It's not the same as the speed of today. So let's say AMD comes out with like 8 gigs of video RAM. That was like 8,000, like say 8,000 say megahertz, right? Back in 2015. In 2025, that type of RAM wouldn't qualify for today. You can come out with a 8 gig variant, but now that RAM that was like 8,000 might be now for like 10 years now. It should be up to like say like 15, 16, somewhere around there. But I'm just giving you an example. So the 8 gigs of video RAM back then shouldn't be the same as today. It's just, I just think it's the speed of the RAM that changes over time within a 10-year period. So and then they say most gamers game in 1080p. Like some gamers, speed, power, and performance matters. To other gamers that don't care about the high-end stuff, 1080p is just fine for them. Speed, power, and performance don't matter. There's like, you know, the 8 gig of video RAM today, it can't be the same as 10 years ago. It's just that the RAM speed and the way the RAM is operating is much faster. It's much faster than the one, say, 10 years ago. That's the only difference when it comes to video games. You know, some gamers, you know, like some gamers, like when it comes to this 1080p man, this 1080p, when it comes to 1080p, they're fine with that, as long as they can see the game runs, and the frame and the graphics is okay in 1080p. They're fine with that, you know. I mean, that's their comfort zone. But other gamers, you know, they try to go. They want speed, power, and performance matter to them. So the 8 gig of video RAM that came out in 2015. That's 2015's 8 gigs of RAM, and that speed stays like that. But to go 10 years now, that means that's to go that 10-year window between 2015 and 2025. The 8 gigs of RAM's speed now, it doubles compared to the one in 2015. So that's the only difference, man, when it comes to this whole 8 gig of video RAM. So but I do understand where gamers are coming from, you know, about the demands of video games, and you know, when it comes to like polygon count, frames, lighting, and stuff like that. I get it, you know, I get it. But that 8 gig of video RAM though is really for people who can't afford the high end stuff. They just want to play that 1080p. As long as they can see the game, they're good. But you know, but for gamers that are into high-end graphics, they can't rely on they can't the 10 that 8 gigs of video RAM is not enough. They got to go above it, above 8 gigs. They got to get a high-end card. So that's the only difference, man. You know, it's just the RAM speed. The speed of 2015 8 gigs of video RAM shouldn't be the same in 2010. The 2010's 8 gig of video RAM. That speed should be doubled. The speed of that should double compared to 10 years ago. So yeah, that's the only difference, man. But the 8 gigs today though is for people who game on 1080p. You know, who like 1080p gaming. You know, so you know there's 1080p gamers. There's 4K gamers, 8K gamers. So yeah, I don't think this is a I don't think it's a big deal. But in the comment section though, you got 183 comments, and these guys are just sounding off. You know. Let me try and get a couple of these. It says, who is this? Willie said this. Low-end GPU should be produced on previous nodes to keep the cost low. They should use 7 nanometer, not 4. Lower clock speed, but more cores and more video RAM. And then who is this? Vol said this. AMD missing another golden opportunity to gain market share. And then Jay said this. AMD is not wrong. Since when was having option a bad thing? I have a 3070 Ti 8 gigs, and I'm getting by just fine with it. I am in no hurry to upgrade. At 1440p, I'm getting 100 plus frames on Halo Infinite, Call of Duty, Battlefield 2042, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Valorant, Resident Evil 4 Remake. It's only $300. That's extra $50. That extra $50 could towards better PC components. Or for 50 plus, you can double the video RAM. The option is there. Yeah. Yeah. If you don't like the 8 gig variant, get the 16 gig model. Just go higher. You know what I'm saying? But the 8 gig of video RAM speed though, back in 2015 should never be the same as 2025. That speed should double. Just saying. It's a 10-year window. You know, I mean the RAM should be fresh in speed. I mean should be fresh, but the speed should double compared to 2015. Who is this? It says and then I think Vol said this. You probably didn't notice the low res texture. LOL. And then who is this? Tech said this. Steve from Hub is against naming cards with the name. Did you see his post? And then who is this? Tata said this. You speak about 4-year-old cards and you play old game. Now think about buy a card in 2025 plus 4 years. Do you really think in 2029 8 gig of video RAM will be enough? A majority of people buy a card for years. So yes, AMD and Nvidia are wrong. 8 gigs of video RAM is not enough anymore, except for cheap cards. And then San Francisco said this. My CPU has immensely more cores, threads for the same price. My CPU cost 10 years ago. RAM is cheap. This is blatant gouging. And then Andrew, I'm gonna get one more. Andrew said this, and they are absolutely right. People may not like it, but that's the reality of the situation. One more, and then Rebuild said this. The poor thumbnail video maker only bears his fangs when it comes to Nvidia products. This contrast is was it nauseating? He said like a puppy waiting to see what its master think. I can't find the 8 gig graveyard. Where is it? Look, I think, look, it goes back to what I said though. if you got 8 gigs of video RAM in 2010, and the speed say, let's say 5,000, whatever, 70, it's a 7500. That 7500 now shouldn't apply to 10 years. 10 years go. Say it shouldn't apply in 2025. That speed needs to double. It needs to. You know, you can't. You know, it needs to because every 10 years or every 5 years video games change. You know, as far as like in detailed levels and everything, it changed. So what these commenters are complaining about is true. It should the speed of the RAM should never be the same. It should double. But if it doubles, then this 8 gig variant, you know, it will perform better versus say 10 years ago. So yeah, but there's 83 comments, man, and they're just letting loose in it. I'm not even gonna sit here and go through the whole thing, but you know, 8 gigs of video RAM in 2015 shouldn't be the same 8 gigs of video RAM today. The RAM speed should double. The performance should be better. I mean, you could have an 8 gig variant, but not the same speed and size as of 10 years ago. No, that won't fly. No. Anyway, but other than that, you do have the option though to buy a say a 16 gig variant or a 24 gig variant if you got the funds. Anyway, I'm gonna leave this video for y'all to enjoy though. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, no Star Wars, Star Trek, Dark Section. Go home. Peace.